Hello, I'm Mary Eileen Buss, one of the librarians here at Long Beach Public Library. And this afternoon, I'm going to be showing you how to make glass dome magnets. We had take and make bags where we gave you some winter paper to go with it, but you can use anything. One of the participants in our program had printed out small pictures of family members and made magnets with those with the face there. I'm probably going to do one with one of my pets later, but I haven't yet. So it's a fairly simple craft. It can be done easily by children from ages 9 and up, but it's also good for adults. I'm going to turn the camera now to my working surface, and I'll go over the supplies needed, and then I'll get started. Okay, so I have materials spread out here. The necessary materials are the glass domes. These are also called cabochons. I bought these, they're very cheap. I got these at Dollar Tree. It's about 60 in a bag for $1. You can also get them off Amazon. These are roughly 3/4 of an inch across. You can get bigger ones, at least an inch across, from Amazon. You also need magnets, craft magnets. These I got a box off Amazon. 120 of these was about, $12 or so. And then you can also find them at Dollar Tree, slightly cheaper, $1 for a dozen. These are thinner than the others, but they're plenty strong enough. And then you need some kind of pretty paper or picture. I've got snowflakes and snowmen and hearts and mittens. So I'm going to be doing a few different ones today. You also need some kind of glue that will dry clear. This is Mod Podge, but plain old Elmer's works just fine, or any other craft glue, fairly strong craft glue that dries clear. You'll need a pair of scissors to cut the paper. You'll need a pen or pencil. This one isn't vital, but it makes things a lot easier. You'll need a paintbrush or Q-tip or something for your glue. You can actually use your fingers if you don't mind them getting all messy, but it does get kind of messy. So the first thing you do is you take one of your glass domes and you take the paper you're going to use. I'm going to do one of these hearts on here. Actually, no, I'm going to do one of the tree branches here. So you place the dome down on your paper and move it around until you've got it where you want it. And then you put one finger on to hold it down firmly. And you take your pen or pencil and draw carefully around it. Now you can do it without this, just cut out a bigger piece and then you'll be trimming it later. But it works better if you draw around it and start with a piece of the right size. So I'm just going to cut that out carefully. And then I'm going to pick up my glass dome, my cabochon, and one side of it, the back of it is flat. And I'm going to put some Mod Podge, some glue, on the flat side. Decent layer, but not so much it'll squish way out the sides too much. So I'll just put some of that on, move it around. They make sparkle Mod Podge. You can do that to have some nice sparkles in there. You don't want just plain glitter glue because then you can't see the picture, but something with a little bit of sparkle in would be nice. And you put it carefully down on the paper that you cut out and you hold it a moment for it to set. And then you can't go on to your next step of this until it's had time to dry. But because until then, it slides, and I'm making a big mess of this. Okay, so I'm going to move, it's not staying. Not sure that one's going to work. So I'm going to move it over to the side, and I'm going to do another one. So I take, let's see what I want to do next. I'm going to go ahead and do the heart on this one. So I take a glass dome and I put it down carefully, maneuver it the way I want. I put a finger on firmly to hold it in place, and I draw around it. You can do this without a pen or pencil. Just cut out a piece that's definitely larger than your dome and trim it later. So I'm going to cut out carefully the piece that's just the right size. And those scraps I'm just going to throw out. So I take my glass dome. It's got one flat side. That's what makes it a cabochon. And I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the back, enough that it'll hold, but not so much it's going to squish way out the sides. If you're using a bottle of Elmer's glue, you can just sort of squeeze one on and then wipe off the excess. And I put it down carefully on the paper that I've cut out, and I hold it steady for a moment to set. And we're going to have to let this dry further for about 10 minutes before we do anything else. So I'm going to put it to the side, and I'll do another one. Let's see if I can do this snowman that I have here. So I'm going to put a dome over it. The domes aren't big enough to do the whole snowman, but I can do his face and the scarf. So I put the dome, the cabochon down carefully, and I draw around it. And I think it shifted a little bit while I was drawing, but that's okay. And I'm going to cut around it carefully. Carefully cut around it. Hope I didn't get that too small. No, it's all right. And that one's no good anymore either. So now I'm going to put some Mod Podge, some of this glue, on the back side, the flat side, underside of the dome. Nice layer, not too much, but enough. And lay the dome carefully on the paper and hold it for a moment to set. And then move it aside. And I'm going to do one more. I'm going to do this pretty plaid here. And I'll find a good place. Yeah. And I hold it in place. And I draw around it. This is scrapbooking paper, but it doesn't have to be particularly heavy. You probably don't want to use tissue paper, but you know, your normal weight paper would work just fine. If you've got pretty cardstock you want to use, that should be fine. You could use a lightweight fabric like cotton, quilting cotton, if you have something with pretty designs on it. You might have to give that a little longer to dry because the glue might go through a little more. Where did I put my dome? There we are. So I put some glue on the underside. Put it carefully down. When you first put it on, the Mod Podge on, or the Elmer's, it's all white, but it will dry clear, so you'll be able to see through it. Okay, and I'm going to put that one aside, and we'll wait a few minutes. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes, and things should be dry enough for us to go on to the next step. Now, this one that I did first and messed up, slid so far over, it's not going to look right. I don't know if you can tell, but there's a little bit of the glass visible on the side. But every once in a while you mess up. So I'm just going to trim off the excess on this side, and we'll see how it looks once I get the magnet on it. It's probably one of those things that you, the crafter, thinks looks terrible and nobody else can see. So it's just a little bit on the top here that's not quite right. So then we take the rest of them and we just trim off the excess. This is why I was saying it doesn't matter too much if you don't have a pen or pencil to draw out the shape around the dome first, because you're going to wind up having to cut excess off anyway. Some cabochon, it's because these are kind of rounded on the edge. Some cabochons will come straight down to a definitive right angle edge, and those you can draw around and cut right in the first place. But these with the rounded edges, it just doesn't work right. So I'm going to cut off all the excess around the edge of all of these. It wouldn't hurt to leave them for a whole half hour, but I didn't want to do that during the session. But you want at least 10 minutes because you don't want it to be too wet still when you stop. And the snowman got a little crooked too, so we'll see how he looks when we come out. So you just trim all the way around. And then we take our magnets. And I'm going to use the thick ones for this. You want magnets that are a little bit smaller. Got a couple of broken ones here. I'll skip those. You want magnets that are a little bit smaller than the size of your dome. They can be exactly the same, but they definitely should not be bigger. And if they're too much smaller, they're not going to look right. So basically, you just take your magnet and put a nice layer of glue on one side. And then you very carefully put the dome down on it and hold it in place for a moment to set and move it aside. And we get another one. And you want enough glue that it's going to hold, but not so much that it'll all squish out the sides and look wrong. So that looks like a pretty good amount. And we'll put it on. And you let it set. Whoops, these magnets are so strong, they're going to move each other around and stick together. We don't want them to do that. Have to keep them a distance apart. And I am getting a little bit of glue on my hands, but it's inevitable and it washes off. It won't hurt anything. Yeah, you can, as I started to do here, you can put the glue on the back of the paper if you want, but I prefer to put it on the magnet. Just seems to work better for me, but you do you. Whatever works best for you. I'm going to move that to one side. Get this pen out of here, it's in the way. And put some glue, some Mod Podge on the magnet. And the last one down. You want to give these at least an hour. 2 is probably better before you try to hang them on the fridge, because you want to make sure that the glue is 100% all the way dry before you try to use them, because if it's not, they might slip apart. But that's basically how you do it. I've got some here that I did earlier for a sample. They don't have magnets yet. I'm going to do that a little later, but you can see what they look like. This is a slightly smaller snowman, so I managed to get a lot of them in. Here's a mitten. You can see I've got mitten paper here. There's a nice snowflake off the blue snowflake paper I have over here. And this one is a bird. I don't think you can see it very well because of the reflections, but it's a nice little aqua colored bird on a branch. So that is how you make winter magnets. If you got one of our take and make bags for this, that's great. You have the instructions with it, and we have this here. If you don't have a take and make bag, I hope these instructions are clear enough for you to do it yourself. The materials are pretty cheap. It's a lot of fun. You can make little stocking stuffers or whatever kind of gifts for people. And if you're local in Long Beach, watch our library events calendar. We have a take and make craft once a month, and you're welcome to register and get a bag and join us on Zoom, where we all work together to do crafts.